Morning. Thank you very much for joining me today for this talk about HubSpot AI and automation. I am just now going to close that window because I can see myself coming up live and I can see all you lovely people here. One more second and then we'll get started. Okay, fantastic. So, as you know, HubSpot, well, as you may know, HubSpot recently had their inbound event and announced a slew of new products and features, and their direction of travel has been manifestly towards AI and automation. And the theme of the inbound was fundamentally, get the data right, and the marketing and the sales will take care of itself. So what this talk is about is a sort of hot take from me about some HubSpot AI and automation features that I think are very interesting and I hope will be useful for you and give you some pointers for things you might want to go and try. Where I'm coming from, I am the founder CEO at Articulate Marketing. We do fabulous websites, brilliant thought leadership, content, copywriting, brand strategy, positioning, messaging, tone of voice, and lots of automation and AI using HubSpot, and we do it for B2B tech companies. So that's my background. I've been doing that for decades. Quick plug, do get in touch with me, Matthew at articulatemarketing.com. Book up a call with me, articulatemarketing.com/meet. I'd be happy to give you a shoulder to cry on, a second opinion, a free no BS marketing strategy session. If you find that useful, I would love to have that conversation with you. There is no live chat on this webinar. It is going out live. It's weak for various reasons. We can't do live chat. So if you email me, I might explain why. Okay. Second quick plug. My next webinar is in October, and I'm really looking at the mid-funnel, how you can get to top of funnel leads and conversions and try and close them. So do come along to that as well. And I've just noticed the Apollo thing there, so I wonder if I can remove that just from. All right, hopefully get rid of the Apollo yellow icon there. Okay, no, totally failed to do that. Well, now you know it's really live. Okay, so let's get to the AI automation. So when I talk to clients, what people say when they go, I want automation and I want data quality and I want to use AI is the subtext is something along the lines of, I want to get the right messages at the right time to the right people, typically email, sometimes live on the website, sometimes through social, sometimes through ads. And I want it to be painless and effort-free. I don't want to have to spend a lot of time fettling it and setting it up, and I don't want to spend hours learning how to use HubSpot. It's really complicated, and we're not doing it very well. And it's astonishing how many companies have invested huge amounts of money into HubSpot and other tools, and then probably aren't doing it very well or at all. And then there is this sort of implicit, don't mess it up, right? Don't send an email to somebody with the wrong name on it, or dear first name. Don't send, or integrate or synchronize data with some other data source and then accidentally send the wrong email to all of our customers that I then have to apologize for. And I've seen AI as a tool and as a function. I've seen automation as a tool, as a function, and I've seen human beings mess things up pretty spectacularly. And very small problems can sometimes cause, be career limiting for agencies, get them fired, really irritate people. There you are. So reconciling risk against managed effort reduction, that's a real thing that I think everyone needs to think about strategically, and I think people need to be coming at this with a sort of a risk management mindset. How much risk are you willing to tolerate and how much are you willing to invest to reduce it? There's a lot of what Blair Enns calls misautomation with AI, and if you've had some of the AI-tuned, AI-written sales emails or spam emails, you'll have seen a good example of that. And I don't want to do that. I'm a people-first AI pragmatist. I'm interested in AI. I think it's really useful, but it's got to be used right. Okay, so this is also where I'm coming from. And I think this is a really something that people need to think through. Businesses need to think through. Marketers need to think through strategically. A few caveats about the selection of things I'm going to talk about today. I've got about 8 or 9 different things I think are quite interesting. HubSpot is releasing a ton of new features, and they release it at pace. Some of them are still in beta, some of them not complete. Sometimes HubSpot releases something in beta and then doesn't, and then withdraws the beta and doesn't replace it. Some of the audiences stuff, for example. Some of it, and I'll give my warnings, I still think is not fit for purpose or at huge risk of mis-automation. And not all of these features are free, and not all of these features are available to everyone on every hub. And that's just kind of HubSpot's model. You know, if you want to ask why, they'll charge you a few £1,000s, and you can upgrade to whatever it is you think you need. I strongly recommend that you sign up for HubSpot's product updates email, weekly email, just see what they're doing. You can go to the product updates section on the menu and then see what they've released and what's coming up, and there's a button there to subscribe. So I think that's a no-brainer for starting all of this. Okay, so let's get started with some of the things I think are actually quite interesting. Assuming you have well-crafted, up-to-date, detailed ideal client profiles, detailed personas, detailed messaging, tone of voice guidelines, and positioning. You do, don't you? If not, let's talk. If you have all of that stuff, absolutely get it uploaded into HubSpot's brand data. And it lives in a few different places in HubSpot. They haven't quite consolidated the settings user interface for this, but uploading your products and so on and data into that. Otherwise, most of HubSpot AI tools are just going to be incredibly generic and non-specific, and that's obviously not what you want. So put that data in. The next thing that I think is worth looking at, and this has been in beta for about a month, and it's now, I think, on general availability, is it's now showing traffic, website traffic, and lead source from AI search, which is, you know, actually where the rubber hits the road for AI optimization. Until very recently, it's quite hard to see if that was actually generating traffic to your site. Very little data as yet. This has been available only for a few weeks, but here's a snapshot from Articulate of just some, you know, sessions that have come in the last week or so. And you can see it's reporting quite interestingly about what AI tools are doing that. So we have a strong hypothesis that AI search traffic is quite high intent, because if you could get the answer you were looking for from ChatGPT, you wouldn't click out. So this sort of zero-click model. Therefore, if someone is clicking because you've been cited in AI search, or you've been given by AI as a, you know, here's a company that does this kind of marketing, or whatever your business is, therefore you could use this data in lead scoring and other kinds of workflows and so on. In and of itself, it's an indicator, we think. And more broadly, lead scoring is something that clients often ask for. It used to be quite difficult to implement in HubSpot. I mean, HubSpot had some lead scoring functionality, and now they've got this engagement score. They've also got a product fit score, which is quite useful. This engagement score is actually really conceptually much easier to use, because what it does is it puts it allows you to bucket the scores into high, medium, and low, and you can then fine-tune the scoring mechanism and see how it runs across your database of contacts, and then that allows you to sort of adjust the scoring to have, for example, as what we've done at Articulate, is quite a small proportion are high engagement, but that means that they're opening a lot of emails, visiting a lot of web pages, clicking on things, and so on, which is great. So that we would probably want to do something with that, like flag them up for human outreach or something like that. And then there's this sort of fat middle of people who are somewhat engaged, filled in a form, downloaded one thing, visited the website, opened an email, and that is useful to know. We might kick up the email sending a bit for those people. And then there's a sort of the big lump of people who've not engaged at all, or very low engagement. But you can decide what you want to do, and then you use the high, medium, low categorization to trigger your workflows and so on, rather than score of greater than 30, because next week when you change the scoring mechanism, it might be 35 that's there. So I think this is really nice, a bit of sort of indirection. I strongly recommend going and setting this up and just seeing what it produces. And I definitely surface the engagement score on contact sidebars so that salespeople can see who's engaged, and start working that through into your workflow. So we like this a lot. This is a nice, useful way of approaching it. So then we start getting into data enrichment, because you want to do things like send emails or send messages or customize your website experience with smart content based on what you know, like what industry somebody is in, or what country they're in, or what size of company they're in, or what their persona or ICP is. I mean, that's how we're doing it at Articulo. That's typically the kinds of models, but there are other kinds of classifications. And HubSpot bought Clearbit last year, which was a data source, and it promised quite a lot, and now that integration is beginning to happen. You're beginning to see this rather more obviously inside the HubSpot platform, rather than it being separate out in Clearbit land. Our experience is, and you can see this from the data here, Clearbit has much more data about companies than it does about contacts. And it's actually quite useful. If anyone's a sort of old HubSpot hand, they'll know that companies used to get enriched with a lot of data, and that was Clearbit data back in the day. So it's doing that stuff, and I think you can use it. I think Clearbit is worth embedding and optimizing in HubSpot, using that data for company enrichment. With some caveats. It's going to use up HubSpot credits, and it's very easy for clients that have got 100,000 companies in their database to burn through a huge amount of HubSpot credits just enriching companies that are not being used. So you need to do a little bit of calibration. You can now trigger these enrichments through workflows, or on lists or recently engaged companies or contacts. And I think that kind of narrowing is important, setting it up carefully and not just switching it on for every contact and every company ever. You get some credits with HubSpot depending on what tier you're on, so you're getting some. I would recommend making sure you're using that stuff. I think you can also we build workflows that transpose company information into associated contacts, so like target sector, company size, that sort of thing, so that we can then use company data to classify contacts. And I think that's a neat trick that means you don't have to enrich contacts individually. You might have 20 people working at one company. You just take that company data and then automate that distribution of data down. But I think still tools like Apollo, and as you can see, I can't get rid of the Apollo icon there. They're better for contact data at this stage. That might change, but that's our sense and recommendation. The other new thing that's coming through and surfacing interestingly in HubSpot is buyer intent. So, for example, identifying when companies get funding, or make staff changing, or change leadership, or whatever. And there are other sort of search buyer intents, like technology, research, and things like that. Now, again, you're relying on HubSpot's data, Clearbit data, to do this. It may or may not be complete or accurate, but in some senses, you're using HubSpot credits that you are already getting as part of your subscription, or you're buying more, and it's all sitting within the same platform. So it's worth experimenting with this. And for almost all the companies that we deal with, including some quite large ones, they don't have any intent data. They're not, I mean, some companies might be using things like Bombora to get this, TechTarget, that sort of thing, and they're paying quite a lot of money for it. And I think, but most companies aren't doing any of this. Actually, using what HubSpot is giving you, even if it's not brilliant, complete, perfect, is better than not having any intent data. And I think this could be used for triggering engagement and personal outreach, and again, triaging and sort of segmenting the contacts that you want to invest human effort into, and sort of the ones that are more likely to go into a sales process or into a marketing process. So I think that the trick, as I've always said with sales, is spending the most amount of time with the prospects that are most likely to convert and likely to be the best fit. And the more you can do that, and the more you can automate that selection with engagement scores and targeting and that sort of thing, the better. And this, I think, is a very interesting tool to explore. Another thing that we've found interesting and we're continuing to explore how best to implement this, because some of the implementation is still a little bit janky. Although we'll see on the next slide how they're now making some of this functionality available in workflows, which is much better, much easier to deploy. But you can write a AI query that populates a structured data field or property in the contact database or the company database, for example, to identify competitors or to pull out, I don't know, names of CEO, or to identify company sites, those sorts of things, which is amazing. It's a really powerful way to use AI, and you can have the AI go and scan the company website and come back with this information, and then go, okay, this is a health tech company, this is an environmental or sustainability company, that sort of thing. And this is work that is quite tiresome manual work. So if you can automate this with AI, fantastic. I think there's an interesting test case, because these use HubSpot credits and there's a cost to it. So you can spend quite a lot of money very quickly scanning through all your database to populate this information. And there's an interesting sort of test case if you're paying a subscription for, say, ChatGPT, £20 a month or something like that, whether it's better just to export the data and have ChatGPT do it on a sort of bulk basis. But that's something we're testing out. But again, I think this is really potentially very exciting. And HubSpot have now got a beta of these tools in workflows, so you can run queries in workflows and do things. Now, the mechanism of doing that, like what comes back and where it lands and what you do with it, is still a little bit evolving. But I ran this research agent across Articulate's website, and it did I think a bang up job of identifying who we're selling to, what we're selling, what our target ICP is, just from analyzing the website, which also is actually quite satisfying, because it means that the website's saying the right stuff. So I think this is also something that is worth a deep dive experiment to test. And almost with AI, the trick is to go, I've got this problem, how do I solve it with AI and automation, rather than ask an answerable question and then try and answer it. Okay. I've talked about this before, but this is getting better and more useful even since a month or so ago when I mentioned it in my AI webinar. You can, if you've got a paid subscription to ChatGPT, and I think also now Perplexity, which we don't use, but other people will, you can connect HubSpot as a data source via an MCP, via an integration, so that you can ask in ChatGPT questions that get answered with HubSpot's CRM or marketing data. And I think that the best use case for this is the kinds of questions that CEOs ask of marketing managers. What's working? What is our success rate with this? What is what's the funnel look like? What's the most successful content? Stuff that actually requires a little bit of thought, analysis, and so on. And what's interesting about it is it seems to bring some serendipity, some interesting insights that maybe you wouldn't have thought about. Maybe that it can act as a sort of a research sidekick or an analyst sidekick. As ever with AI, really, you've got to take the results with some kind of pinch of salt and use it as an adjunct, rather than take its answers as sort of gospel. And sometimes you have to reframe the question to get the right sort of answers. So I do a podcast for one of our clients called Black Dot Solutions, where I interview a lot of OSINT analysts, open source intelligence analysts. And if you're interested in source criticism and sort of analytical thinking, it's a very interesting podcast to hear these people talk about that critical thinking and logical thinking and overcoming logical fallacies and things. And I think that skill set is going to be really, really important and valuable for people who are working with AI these days. Okay, moving on. There is, if you are paying for OpsHub Pro or whatever it's called this month, you've got this brilliant thing of just being able to automatically apply some data quality fixes, like getting the capitalization on first name, last name, like removing the last name from the first name field and things like that. Just stuff that is really, really fiddly to do manually. And if you can automate it, and have it running regularly, it just is going to improve. When you send an email, dear first name, and it's kind of, capitalized it properly, it's just going to look better. So if you've got this, switch it on. And I have been in this week looking at 2 client portals who are paying for this functionality, didn't switch it on, and I'm thinking, there's no HubSpot credits involved in this. It's just like a free improvement. Go investigate that. Okay, a couple more things, and then we'll come to some hesitations. I have experimented with Fathom. We have clients who use Fireflies. There are other note takers out there. These are when you get like an AI invited into your Teams, Google Meets, Zoom meetings, and it transcribes and takes notes. And now HubSpot has their own built into the HubSpot platform. And I think, again, it's going to use HubSpot credit, so it's not free exactly, but I suspect it's likely to be cheaper for most users than having a separate tool with a separate integration. And I think, broadly speaking, the fewer tools you have, Occam's razor applies, entities shouldn't be multiplied unnecessarily. The fewer tools you have to do what you need to do, if you can do it all in, or more of it in HubSpot, the better. It's less to manage, less cost, less administration, less rogue IT, etc., less a security attack surface, data privacy attack surface. So I think this is a really nice thing. So we're almost certainly going to deploy this across all of our meetings and calls and just have it work. They've also released a beta version of this that works on iOS, on iPhones, and will actually record and transcribe live in-person meetings. You put your phone on the table, do you mind if I record this, hit the button, and you get that, which I think is also very nice. There are a couple of tools that out there that do that as well, but if you've got that and it's coming into the HubSpot database, into the CRM, fantastic. So this is a nice AI time saver and a win. The last thing I want to mention this morning is Customer Agent, and we've been experimenting quite a lot with this. Last year we built a prototype API integration into ChatGPT that effectively surfaced a custom GPT on a website, on a HubSpot hosted website, where you could interact with it like you interact with a large language model, but it was trained on a particular client's data and knowledge base. And we built that, we prototyped it, and it was kind of interesting, but there were some costs involved, and in the end that project didn't come to fruition. We didn't build a production version of it. And then along comes HubSpot and basically makes that functionality available inside the app itself, with Customer Agent, which I think is great. So what it actually allows you to do is to build a chatbot with a knowledge base. You upload documents, you refer to particular pages, so that could be your support knowledge base, it could be your sort of library of diagnostic things to help people with customer support. It could be, you could upload your product literature and your battle cards and your data sheets and all of that stuff, and product pages on the website, and so you can train it. Very easy to do. It doesn't take very long. It probably half an hour, unless you've got a very complicated set of data. And then people can go to a website page, and you can deploy this as a chatbot, HubSpot chatbot, anywhere on a site. So you can have it come up on specific pages or on every page, or you can have different versions of it, like a support agent in one place and a sales agent in another place. You can build in a handover from the AI to humans, so you can say, look, if somebody says I want to talk to a person, it kicks that over to a live chat or a more conventional chatbot. So it's a very, very nice way of delivering AI support, and I think if you like having a chatbot on your site and you are spending a lot of money staffing that for customer support or staffing that for sales, this might be a genuine time saver. In other words, you could have those agents spend more time on people who really need their help rather than answering sort of basic questions. Flip side of it is each conversation is going to cost you about $1 in HubSpot credits, and so you kind of need to make sure that the value exchange there is meaningful. Also, we've seen a lot of clients over the years who wanted a chatbot but didn't want the cost, either outsourced or internally, of staffing it during office hours. And this might be a way of sort of doing that without actually the whole cost of paying for somebody. And you can still sort of go, I want to raise a ticket, or I want to send an email. So I think this is a real winner for the right company. Okay, so those are some automation AI tools that I think are really interesting and all relatively new or very new from HubSpot. A few hesitations just as we bring this sort of webinar to a close. I am, as I've done a webinar about AI and thought leadership, and that's still available on the website as a pre-recorded webinar. I am skeptical about AI auto-created content. I just don't think it's quite there yet. I think AI as a writing assistant, as an editing assistant, as a research assistant, fantastic. I still believe if you want to do thought leadership, you actually have to be, you have to have a human being in there somewhere. So I think a lot of Content Hub stuff in HubSpot I'm wary about. I think the social remix tool is okay if you really are desperate to do lots and lots of social and you really don't want to spend the time doing it manually, but I don't think it's quite ready for prime time. And we've had a couple of clients look at it, and we've looked at it and kind of went, no, let's not do that. I think there's a real risk of mis-automation and accidentally doing quite stupid things and breaking things with that. There's a prospecting agent that will write those sort of AI, I really like what you're doing at Articulate Marketing. I'm very impressed by how, you've grown the business. Those sort of, you've seen those emails in your inbox. It can do those at scale. And again, I'm just not really sure I want to hand over the first contact between my business and a prospective customer to an AI yet. I was hit up by somebody trying to sell me a prospecting agent type of thing that phones people and has an AI query, an AI bot that talks to people. I thought, that sounds very scary. I suppose it will happen one day. There is some beginnings of anonymous visitor identification, for anonymous website visitor identification, and that could be incredibly interesting, just using reverse IP lookup, I think. But when we tested it, it identified about 1 in 10,000 visitors on our website, so it's still not quite ready there. And HubSpot's personalization thing is really a variant of Content Remix. It just sort of takes your CTAs and rewrites them for some, So in short, I investigated all of these thinking I might be able to tell you about them and how exciting they are. Maybe version 2 of these will be better. Maybe in some use cases they'll be ideal for you, but I think a lot of the let's just put an AI in it, it's like Portlandia, let's put a bird on it and call it art. It's just AI for AI's sake, and it's not quite ready for prime time, in my opinion. Okay, so that is sort of the end of the run through. Again, would love to talk to you if you have any questions about any of this. You want to know in detail how to do it. If you want to, marketing strategy session, very happy to do that. Do please, if you've enjoyed this or found it useful, do come along to the next one. Do also look at the previous webinars, pre-recorded webinars. Very much love to see you in October. But that is it for today. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a fantastic day.